Okay, it's Saturday morning and I'm back to work on the Anycubic Castle Rostock Delta style 3D printer. This is I have the linear plus version with the linear ball bearing slides instead of the pulley style. Mine does not have a heated bed, and I think I said in the first video that it was the heated bed version, and that's just because I was reading the description off the Amazon webpage and didn't really catch what I was saying. I want to talk a little bit about the tools that I'm using for this. The kit does come with a set of tools. Here you can see there's a little screwdriver, a couple little smaller Allen wrenches, and then a 2.5 millimeter large Allen wrench. Those are adequate to put the machine together, but if you have some of the other tools, or you really are into buying tools, which, I mean, who isn't? You bought a 3D printer, right? So of course you're going to buy tools. There's some other tools that would really be handy to have. So let me just go through those really quickly. You're going to want to have a ruler. This one is in metric and imperial units, of course. It's hard to find good metric rulers, at least at Walmart. I probably could order one online somewhere. I haven't done a lot of metric stuff. I understand the metric system, but mostly I use imperial measurements because I'm a woodworker. This one's problematic because if you notice here at the end, the 30 millimeter mark is 3 or 4 millimeters from the very end, and if you go down to the other end, the 0 mark is also not lined up. And there's a lot of places where when you're working on this machine you need to measure from a flat surface out to 5 millimeters, 10 millimeters, whatever. Can't do that very well with this ruler. I think what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to grind the end of this ruler off just so I have an accurate 0 at the end. Yeah, I know you can start at 10 or start at 1 and burn a centimeter or something like that, but you'll see later on when I'm working on the machine that that's not really that practical for what I need to do here. So instead, when I need to do that, I'm going to use my digital calipers. I've actually got this set right now. You can see there's a little depth gauge at the end. I've actually got this set. Whoops, dropped the camera. I've actually got this set. If we turn it on here, well, it says it's at 0, but I've actually got it set at exactly 5 millimeters. I didn't realize it zeroed out when it shut off. I thought it held its measurement. Also useful to have, you don't have to have it, but it is useful to have a feeler gauge. You don't really need it, but for setting the Z height, it can be kind of useful. I actually am going to use a piece of paper to set the Z height, but there's a couple of other places. There's some clearances between the tooth pulleys that drive the timing belts that move the effector, where you want to be sure you've got adequate clearing between the base of the pulley and the stepper motor that it connects to. A pair of scissors, real useful for this. X-Acto knife. Again, you don't really have to have it for this, but kind of useful to have. I also have got a pair of flat nose needle pliers, miniature pliers here. Again, you don't have to have those. I've actually got a set of these pliers in different needle nose and side cutters and end snippers and a couple of other. These are little Stanley. This is a little Stanley kit I picked up on Amazon. I think it was only like $8 or $10. They've been really useful for working on small things, so that's kind of nice to have. Another thing that I have, I'm just trying to get the camera strap out of here. Pair of hemostats. There are some places where you need to put very small bolts into, or small nuts rather, well, no, nuts and bolts into some small places, and hemostats are really handy for that. Some people call these forceps. No, I don't think these are forceps. These are hemostats, and they're for clamping down on stuff. Some people just call them clamps, I think. Anyway, you can get these. These are cheap. I think I probably only paid $1 or $2 for these, so they're pretty cheap. And they're not surgical grade, but they do the job pretty well. A little emery board. There's some places on some of the plastic fittings where there's some plastic flash, some mold flash, and you want to kind of sand that off. I picked this up at a local music store. I guess guitar players like to file their nails down. I'm not a guitar player, but I go in and buy guitar strings for my kids, and they always give me one of these, and I found it really helpful to have in the shop. The supplied toolkit does come with Allen wrenches, like I said, but I actually have a set of metric ball drivers. These are really nice. I just got these actually. I've had an SAE set for a long time, but more and more of the things that I'm getting into are metric, and so I finally broke down and bought a set of metric ball drivers. These are the Bondis brand, which I always thought was made in Germany, but looking at it in detail, it says it's made in the United States. And I looked at my old set. I have an SAE set from the same manufacturer that I probably had for 30 years, and I noticed that those are made in the United States as well. So good for us. Anyway, those are the tools that you need on this little project. The kit as it ships is pretty complete. In fact, you can build the printer completely from what's provided in the kit. But I picked up a couple of extra things for building the second one that I think will make it a little bit easier to build. These are number 4 split washers or lock washers. I'm not using them as lock washers, but there's a couple places where I want to shim some pulleys, the upper pulleys, the idler pulleys for the belt. So I want to shim those just a little bit. And these are nice and thin. The split will just kind of compress out of the way, and that will help hold the pulleys so that they turn a little bit more smoothly. I got these from, you can see here, RTL Fasteners, and they've had these for probably 15 years. In model airplane stuff, but any little small washers will do the job. You'll see that in a later video. I also picked up some of these M4 insertion nuts. I think I showed you that in the first video when we're putting the upper triangle and lower triangle together. These slip into the 2020 aluminum channel, and if you look at them closely, you can see that they kind of have an oblong shape here, and what happens is that these slip into the channel vertically. No, that's not right. But they slip in the length of the channel, and then when you tighten the screw up, they turn and catch on the edges of the channel, and that does a couple of things. One is that it centers the screw in the channel so that it does not move from side to side, and then it locks in place so that this catches the side of the channel easily. What's supplied with the kit are some square M4 nuts. Those work okay, but I found them a little bit fussy, and they tended to kind of bind up and scar up the inside of the channel and make it hard to slide things together. I think these are going to work a lot better. Well, so far they have worked a lot better. I don't have them right now, but some M3 insert nuts are the same size, and you want to be sure that they are sized to fit 2020 aluminum extrusion, because that's what the kit's made out of. So you want to get some M3s as well. In fact, the M3s are probably more important than the M4s, and when I ordered these I had forgotten that I really needed the M3s, and I bought the M4s instead, just because I looked through the instructions really quick, and the first thing I saw was square nuts and M4 screws. So I ordered the M4s, but I really should have gotten M3s. So I've ordered a package of those. You can find those on Amazon or Small Parts or any of those kinds of places. I ran out this morning and I was out of Loctite, so I went ahead and picked up a bottle of Loctite. Interesting, this is blue Loctite, but you can see it's actually in a red container. So the blue Loctite is the kind that is removable. Red Loctite supposedly is permanent, although you can break it, but you don't want to make it completely permanent. So get some blue Loctite. It comes in handy when you're putting the effector together. I have found on the first machine that I built that the screws that connect the effector to the guide rods do tend to work loose every few hours, and I've tightened them down repeatedly, and I've been meaning to put Loctite on them for a couple of weeks now. So later on today I'll do that. I picked up some large rubber bands. These are number 117 bands. I had some number 64s. They were a little too short and stiff for what I'm going to do with these. The reason I've got these is that the rods, the carbon fiber rods that hold the effector to the linear slide assembly, they have a little bit of play in them, and I figured out that if I ran some rubber bands and kind of hooked it over the ends of the rods, it would take up any of that slack. There was a little bit of roughness in some of the things that I was printing, just because the effector was kind of wiggling around a little bit, because it tends to jerk around. It moves in one direction, very quickly turns the other direction, and so there was a little bit of backlash in there, and these rubber bands were able to take it up. So these are cheap. So pick up a package of these, and you can make a quick little tune-up improvement, real cheap tune-up improvement to the machine. This is silicone tubing. This is sold in hobby shops. You can get it at auto parts stores sometimes as well, or maybe even your local hardware store has it. I bought this just to use as kind of a strain relief. There are a couple of places, well, the sensor wires that go to the homing switches run through the center of the aluminum channel, and the ends of the aluminum channel are sharp. Those wires got to run over those sharp edges, and so what I did was I cut some 1-inch pieces of this stuff, and I tucked that into the ends of the aluminum extrusions, and then ran the wires through them to protect those from rubbing against that aluminum. Normally the machine's not going to be moving around much, although I pick this one up and I throw it in the car and take it home on the weekends, and then take it back to school beginning of the week. And so mine does get moved around a little bit. But even so, even if your machine's going to stay still, you still probably don't want those wires running over the sharp edge of that aluminum. For the same reason, I picked up these little gripper pads, and these are the ones left over from the first machine. There's no feet on the bottom of the machine, and probably somewhere down the line I'll make a print file and I'll print up some feet to put on the bottom of the extrusion. But in the meantime, I bought these. These are self-stick, and I just put them on the bottom. I used 6 of them to lift the machine up off the tabletop just a little bit, and they've worked really well. Again, these came from the hardware aisle at Walmart, and they were cheap. Finally, I got a couple of cable ties. I've only got 3 here, but I've got more. I've got a big supply of them. You've seen cable ties before, I'm sure. There's a couple of places where you want to tie the wires down as they come through. So if you get all those things, you can tune up your machine pretty cheaply and make it a little bit better. But I would say that the most of all the little extra parts that I've mentioned here, probably getting those M3 hammerhead insert nuts for the 2020 extrusion is probably the most important thing to get. And that concludes this video. Thanks for watching. I guess that's what everybody says at the end of YouTube videos. Thanks for watching, and push the like button and subscribe to all 2 of my videos.